Hello everyone. Welcome today. I will be creating AWS EKS on my console, and this is what we're doing today. EKS is the Elastic Kubernetes service. And what we're going to be talking about is what is EKS, what is the benefit of using EKS for Kubernetes, and then how we'll create Amazon Elastic Kubernetes. So, EKS is a managed Kubernetes service that runs on AWS, and since it's managed, meaning that you don't have to run most of the applications and pods, especially manage the API servers, the etcd, the controllers, how they are being run. You don't have to start worrying yourself about that. And it installs all the necessary applications, including the controller managers, the schedulers, even the kubelets and the container runtime. So this is, you don't need to bother yourself. It also maintains the control plane, and what it does is it ensures scalability and availability. And this is what Amazon EKS does the most. It makes it a little bit much easier to manage your Kubernetes service. So it also, once the EKS is now running, it just allows you, the users, to be able to deploy and manage your own application workloads, whatever application you want to run on the worker nodes. So the benefits of EKS cluster for Kubernetes is that it provides a more secure networking, and you tend to use authentication by integrating the AWS IAM, and it also allows you to use AWS security service. It supports scaling of the cluster, both up and down and horizontal scaling, and it uses the horizontal pod auto scaling based on your CPU custom metrics, and it also provides high availability because of the presence of the auto scaling group and the load balancers among different multiple availability zone. So the what we are going to be working on right now is how we'll be creating the EKS cluster. So first of all, we'll be working on creating the VPC, the subnet, and the VPC is actually your virtual private cloud, the subnet, the NAT group, and so to give you a broad understanding on what you would see when creating your VPC, let me take you straight to the console. So now we're in the console. We'll just go straight to the VPC. So you can see the VPC. The next step is to create, and now instead of using a VPC only, we are going to use VPC and more, and then we'll give it our VPC name. So I will give it just EKS project 1. Now you can actually remove the auto generate if you want to make some modifications to the name, but I wouldn't need it. The reason why, because the auto generate will help me create all the other necessary infrastructure without the need for me to start making those modifications. And then I will still use the CIDR block, which is a 10.0.0.0/16. That will still give me about 65,000 IPs. And we move on straight to the number of availability zones that I will need. I will just need only just 2 availability zones, and the public subnets I would use we use 2, and for the number of private will still be 2. So where 2 public subnets will be in one public subnet will be in one availability zone, another will be in another availability zone, and same thing goes with the private. and I'll have to just create one NAT gateway since I am using a private subnet. This is to allow internet access, and since I'm not using a production setting, I won't need to go that far by using a S3 gateway. I will just make it none, and for me to for you to be able to understand what I'm saying. So just take a look at this. So now in the two availability zone, US61A and US61B, you have the public subnet and private. US61B, you have the public subnet and private, and both subnets. For the public is connected to the route table, that is the public route table, and then the private is connected to two different private route tables. And then you now have the two private route tables connected to the NAT gateway to allow internet access. That will still be connected to the elastic IP, and then for the public subnet, it will be connected to the internet gateway. So then I will move on to just creating it. So let's go. So while we wait, our VPC is being created. Now you can actually see that the elastic IP is also being created. This is for the NAT gateway, and then we'll wait for the NAT gateway to get activated. So now our route tables, everything has been created. To get a more clearer picture and see what VPCs were created, you can actually see the VPC. This is the name itself that I gave it, and then you check, you have the subnet. There are so many subnets that are here, so let me just refresh this so that you can be able to see it. Okay, see it there. So now you can see the public and private, you have the routes. So before you can see the elastic IP. Let me show you the elastic IP. You have the elastic IP and NATs. Yep. So we have them all available. So now moving on, we will now go into creating the IAM role for the cluster, and we'll create for both the node and for the cluster itself, the node group and the cluster itself. The cluster has a different role, and the node group has a different role. So let's just go straight over there, and so let's go and create our role. So there are several roles we would create, but let's just so let's create one new role, and then to do that we will use, remember, it has to be, the trusted entity has to be AWS service, and the service and use case has to be EKS. That's for the cluster. Once you do that, you will now choose EKS cluster. So the EKS cluster comes with the EKS cluster policy, and you don't need to do anything here except we move on to the next stage by giving it the role name. So I will just have to give it my EKS project 1. I'm giving it that same name with that same role. So when I go down, I don't have to start disturbing myself. Giving it EKS project 1, and I think I'm creating the role. So next is to create the node. I'll create another one. So this is still the same, but here I would have to, and since you know they are using the instances, you will just have to use this EC2 instance, and let's go. Yep, so I'll just have to just go straight EC2 instances. So now the difference between that one and this EKS cluster node is that I will have to attach at least 3 different policies. So first, I'll have to attach the worker node policy. So you search for worker node. I think that should be it. Let me be sure. Yep. So once this is done, next, and this worker node is to ensure that EKS can be able to manage your nodes, right? And then you have the next one, which is a container. So I would choose this. Yep. So once I choose it, and the last one will be your CNI. Yes, so this is actually very important so that you will not have any issues concerning networking and creating your nodes and being able to transmit and install your applications and pods that are needed. So I think that should just be all. So let me remove this, and I'll also give it EKS projects. I'm gonna say projects one node. So I could actually see the containers, and this is all what I need, and then I create the role. So now we are done with this. Next is to now create the cluster. I would go on ahead to the main course of events and open a different tab. I'll still give it the same name, EKS project 1, and then you have this. So now you can actually see that the cluster role has already chosen this. I don't have to still go any further. If I have not created it, it will be empty, so I have to go and create a new one, and then move on to this. And this version, there are so many versions. This is just one of the new ones that has been created, I think this year, 2024. So there may be other versions, and there will be other versions. So now I'll have to leave this. The API and the API config map is actually needed for authentication anytime you want to have access or interact with your EKS. So you need your API and the config map. Config map will need this secret encryption. I would really love for this encryption to come on, but because I'm not running any application that requires secrets, I wouldn't need to run this, and I wouldn't need to create an AWS secret, so this is not needed. And then I would move on to choosing the VPC. So I won't use default. I would have to use EKS project 1, and because I'm creating my clusters using the private subnets, I would remove this and remove this. I think that's that private 1, private 2, and then for the security groups, I will just leave it on default, so it creates it by itself. And then for the endpoints, my access endpoints, I would use this person here. So moving on, this is private, and I go. So now for the metrics, you actually need this. In short, everything you need it, but because I don't need the CloudWatch logs to be able to monitor the API server and determine how many API requests has been made to the cluster, or the authenticators that requires the number of authentication that was requested for, or the control manager to know what the control manager is doing, or the schedulers to know what pods or where the scheduler is sending the pods to, or creating the pods. I wouldn't need all this. If I wanted to watch them and know what the scheduler is doing, I would have done that, but nah, I don't need it. So now the next thing is the networking. So this VPC, CNI, the kubeproxy, and the core DNS, these are actually pods that will be created, installed in your cluster. And there's still one more. So the Amazon EKS pod identity agent. So the kubeproxy is needed for networking within the cluster itself, so for it to be able to have the cluster IPs, and the VPC CNI is actually needed for also for the pod networking within the cluster itself, while the core DNS is for outside discovery, like the load balancers and the load ports and so on. So this core DNS is needed. So since this is the default, there's a new feature that is just on, and where you can actually decide you want to use the default, you just want to use an outside party, a third party. So let's move on, and then this is all what is going to be installed. There are still other things that will be installed, and then we can move on to creating our cluster. So we have this, and then let's wait and just see while the EKS cluster is being created. Next thing is to now go into creating our key pairs. Okay, yeah. So for this we'll need the EC2, and then let's open a new link for that. So we are creating a key pair and also a security group. So I will just give you on how you create the key pairs. I'll just come here. So to create a key pair, I would use this and give it my name, whatever name I want to use, and I'll have to use the PEM key. I don't use this, so use the PEM key, and then I create. But because I already have so many key pairs, I will go and use my favorite, which is this person here. So moving on, I will have to create the security group. For the security group, I would use let me see, I would use so yeah, that's it. Oh yeah, it creates one more. So let's try and create a security group. I'll just name it EKS projects 1 2 3. I'll give it that. So this is to allow just SSH, and then the VPC I'll be using it in is in this VPC, and then I would add in an inbound rule, which is just SSH. I don't need any other thing. So for the costume, I would prefer using my own IP rather than using that. Let me just use anywhere, and that's for security reasons, to use your own IP. But for now, we use anywhere. Okay, it's still safe here, so no cause for alarm, so I can communicate with it. So then I think that should be all. I don't think there's any other thing. So now I will create. So once this is done, just give it any name. I don't really want to put about this. So once this is done, I will still have to check if my cluster is ready. So we can wait and See, so my roles have been created, my cluster is still being created, still being created. I can't do anything because I will need it, so I can create my node groups. If you take a look, this is where some of the core DNS will be created. Since they are pods, these are actually pods that will be installed. So you can wait and watch. So pods are running. That's the core DNS. If you check further, you have the core DNS. I think there should still be more that should be running. Let's see. The jobs, the clone jobs. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we don't have the nodes running yet, and then we can begin to create the nodes. So to do that, we'll go here, over here. You can see there are none here. So then we create a node group. So to create a node group, I will still give it the same name. Everything literally have to be the same, almost the same. Okay, I'll just add it node. So once this is done, we have this already. Remember, I've created a node and IAM Roles, so that's why this is showing. Then I move on. I won't use a launch template, and the labels, I don't need to label my nodes since I don't have so many nodes running, and the things and this I won't have to do that, and I move on. So for the next step is to use the Amazon Linux, and the capacity I'm using on demand. I won't have to use spots, so I won't have issues creating. Then for the instance types, I'm using T3 medium because I actually like using T3 medium rather than the T2 micro. T2 micro is free. So to just re-emphasize this, I would look for the T2 micro, which is a little bit much, or I would run some applications inside. Then for the desired scaling configuration, my desired scaling configuration, the desired size will be the number of nodes that will be created at launch. So when my nodes and the cluster is already running, this is the number of nodes that will be running. But the minimum size will be 2, while the maximum will be obviously 2. And then I would use the maximum unavailability. So this is just basically the number of unavailable nodes when there is an upgrade. So example, when the cluster is upgraded from 1.3 to maybe 1.5, I would determine the number of nodes that will go offline before it will be upgraded, and then another one will go offline and that one will come up, and so on. That's how it goes. So I would use 1, and then moving on for the subnets, since I'm creating in the private subnet, I'm using these two, the private 1 and the private 2, and then 2 different availability zone. So to be able to create, I still need to configure this. I almost forgot. So you have to configure this to enable SSH. And since you remember that we've created our SSH and also the security, I would use my favorites. I'm using this guy here, and then for the security, I would choose no, I'm choosing this person. No, I don't know what I'm supposed to choose. Yeah, this is for the remote access. So I'm choosing this. Yep. So now that we have all that is ready, I'll still have to confirm and check the node groups, the security. I'm using the security just to give a quick understanding. I think this is it. Yep. So we'll create and we wait. You can wait, and I would pause the video while we are still creating. So you have the nodes running, I think. Yeah, so it's ready. I think that should be all. I don't think there's any other thing. It's ready. I think it's fully ready. So I have to still give it a moment to see if all resources are present. Yes. So all resources are there: the AWS node, the core DNS, the pods, the key proxy. Yes. So core DNS obviously for the networking, the key proxy for the networking, for the cubes, and also the AWS node. So these are actually necessary and important applications that are already installed. And then we'll move on. So now we can actually go into the instances. Well, how do we go into them since they are all in the private? We have to use Bastion. Bastion is actually the best and secure way to be able to interact with your pods, and this is based on standard. So we have to create a Bastion host. There are so many instances, and I will just go straight to creating. So it won't be just. Let me just go into them. So next, I'll have to just give it a name. This one is node group 1, node 1A, and node 1B, just to give it a unique identity. And then we launch our Bastion host. The Bastion host will have to run on the public, and then we'll be able to use it. So I'll call it Bastion 1. And then I'm using T2 micro. Since I don't know, I just need to interact with. Then I'm using the key. So I will choose on the one that I like, which is my favorite. Yeah. So now I will use a different VPC, which is the VPC I created. And it's going to be in the public subnets since it's the Bastion. And I'm going to enable public IP. Then for accessibility, I'll create a new one. And since I'm going to use anywhere, I would use this. And then I think that should just be all. So the T2 micro, the Amazon, and then this is my Bastion. And so we would launch it. To be sure, I have to be very sure of my Bastion. So now we'll connect to it. So to connect, I do not need this. I would SSH inside. So let's begin. I would confirm if my AWS is there. So Yeah, it's there. I don't need to use whether version or old version. I will then now configure. So remember that I will have to create and install AWS. I actually use an AWS AMI so that I don't need to install it. To install the AWS, I will just have to use their documentation to install. Yeah, this is for private. Let's just go straight to kubectl. So now I would first install my kubectl since I'm already using the AWS and I'm using a Linux AMD. I'll copy this and install and just follow every single step. And since I'm using Kubernetes 1.3, I'll just install it straight. And then yes, I think there should be a final step. So now we have kubectl running and then our AWS running. So I have to get them from the documentations. For the AWS installation, you still have to use this documentation and check to see how you can install the AWS. Then to install the EKS CTL, yeah, I have to make an installation separate from this. True. Well, you can actually confirm if the EKS is actually present here. EKS CTL version. Once it's not here, we'll have to install. And since we are using this, I just have to just copy all of this and install. So we're good. So for me to be able to connect to my cluster, I will need for my bastion to be able to talk to my cluster. Then to do that, I will need to go over here and go to my cluster, and then I will go to the security. I think that should be networking. So this is the security. I don't think there's need. So now the security, I would now connect it to my own bastion using a HTTPS. So I would edit the inbound and just make another modification, which is a HTTP inbound HTTPS. So I will connect it to my own security. Let me see. Security. This is it. Yes, so that I can be able to talk to it. So I would save these rules, and then so once it is done, I will now go straight to my bastion. And my bastion, it doesn't look so nice. I just have to just SSH in using a VS Code, and to do that I've done that here. So I will try and confirm if I can still talk. Yes. So now I would now try and connect with my EKS. So I will now run this command. before I even do that, I will need to configure my bastion to my AWS user. So I will just run this, and once this is done, I would insert my access key and secret access key. Let's see, I do this and then I run this. So let's try again. First run this, and then we have this user. As you can see, that is my user. So I will now go straight to running the other commands to connect. So the region will be US East 1, while the name is EKS Project 1. Yeah, that's it. Just to be sure, I still need to check and confirm. Yep, that's it. So now the config has been created. I could try to run something. Let's see. So since it's still not talking to it, I still have to modify the security. So I have to still go and confirm where the problem is coming from. Since I can't still, let me try and just check where the problem is. Since I can't done this, let me check my instances to see. Okay, let me check. What security am I using? Okay. Launch 30. So let's now go over here. I think that should be where the problem is coming from. Launch 30, yeah, I think it's here. So I would save this and still confirm and see if I can be able to do something. So let's try again and see. Oh yeah. So now that it's ready, I can try and see if I can just get pods in the namespace cube system. I think that should be it. Yeah. So all these are there. So let's just try and see whether we can create something. Just a simple application. Let me just try and just say deployment. So just a simple application, and then our I'll apply this. Let me clear this first. So I will apply this. Yeah, sorry. So once this is created, you can check airports, and it is waiting for it to run. That should be running. Okay, so I gave it 30 seconds. We'll still have to wait for 30 seconds to elapse for the readiness probe. That should be done. So it's running. So now that it's running, I think we are done. See you next time. Bye.